This is our fourth Transformative Simulation in Practice webinar. And this is a really fantastic one because we've got Colette, who, for those of you, I'm sure you all do know, but if you don't know, Colette is the immediate past president of ASPE. And she's been involved in transformative simulation for a very long time, right at the beginning, really. And but beyond that, the work she's been doing has been very transformative for years. And I think that's exactly what she's going to talk us through now. And it really does show, I think, that that progression that we keep talking about, that transformative simulation isn't new. We've known it's been done for a long time, but how we conduct it and how intentional we are is, kind of really important, and why we're building on this work. And Colette is just, I'm really excited about this one because she just has so many wonderful examples. And every time I talk to you, you have
Build it
something
up.
new. Well, I'm good, yucks, it's true, but you have something new. You tell me, you go, oh yeah, this was transformative sim. And I'm like, oh gosh, I've never heard that one. So I think you're in for a real treat, and I'm going
Oh,
to
I hope
stop
so.
talking and I'm going to hand over and let you take everyone on
Yay.
this journey with you. So thanks, Colette.
Oh, thank you. And so lovely to have so many people. And please just let me know, Sharon, again, if it's sharing the right. I'm
Yeah,
going to do it from Windows and pick the presentation. Are you seeing a full screen?
I am. Perfect.
Hurrah! Thank you. Okay. So I pulled this together after being asked by the SIG, and I'm delighted to really acknowledge the special interest group, Sharon, Andy, Phil, and everyone else that's been involved. And I do need to acknowledge really great guy called Peter J, who's the director of Sim at Guy's and St Thomas's for many years, and obviously everyone around me who I've worked with and work with currently and in the past. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey around how we got to do some transformative simulation. So do think about your own well-being. If there's any fire alarms that go off while you're on this call, do pay attention to them. Very happy for people to ask questions. Sharon, you keep an eye on that for me, I'm sure, if they come in the chat.
Yeah, will do.
And just sit back and don't keep your hand over your mouth. Please ask questions. And hopefully I'm going to take you on a sort of, 14-year journey in about 50 minutes. So we'll see how we go. So the aim is to share our journey at Guy's and St Thomas's, and to touch on the ethical aspects of transformative simulation, ethics and safety, from everyone's perspective. So I'd like to invite you to consider the basic assumption, hold us all in high regard, so we can collaborate and share thoughts and ideas. And we'll definitely look at the chat, and we'll finish at 2 o'clock. I'm hoping everybody's okay with that. Can't see thumbs up with the way I've done the screen, so I apologise, but Sharon will be my eyes and ears. Oh, I saw a thumbs up. There you go. It's on the other screen. So where did we start? Well, at Guy's and St Thomas's, we were the originators of the diamond debrief model. So I wanted to share that with you because it's very key to what's been part of our journey. So a 3-phase multi-mode model, always designed to be co-facilitated with 2 people, a series of structured questions that were designed on uncovering people's emotions so that we could try and expose the learning opportunity after a simulation activity, predominantly for education. And where did we start with simulation in terms of simulation-based education and what we now know as transformative simulation? It all started with our biomedical research team, and their need to help prepare staff, so drills and skills mostly, or skills and drills, in terms of their regulatory compliance preparation for becoming a BRC. And so we had to really think, were we going to be centre-based? Were we going to be in situ? And actually we ended up doing a bit of both, and we had an away day and team building as well as some in situ. And this is us actually trying to work out the logistics of the simulation within the centre as it had just been built. And that was some time ago now. We found some significant challenges. And over the course of the 7 years of 2012 to 2019, we were using educational design, but every time we were doing in situ simulations, we were identifying latent threats. We were including colleagues, but we didn't really know what we were doing, in all honesty, in terms of the right way to do things. But we realized our debrief model, that diamond, which I hold very dear and use it all the time, we had to modify it, and we brought in the plus delta method and advocacy with inquiry into the analysis stage, because really asking people how did that make them feel didn't get what we wanted. And I've put question marks by, were we understanding error in systems at the time? I can say no, I didn't. I can't speak for the whole trust, but really what we were doing was, when we were just identifying latent threats, that was the tip of the iceberg. There's many more things that we now know, and looking back over past slides and data and presentations, it's fascinating what we knew. We didn't really do anything with that data, and that links to the ethics that I'm going to touch on later. So one of the biggest things that we did was, back in 2015, some guidelines around difficult airway came in, some newer guidelines in the UK, and we were asked to rehearse management of an unexpected difficult intubation. And so that was the educational guidance, and we were to go into all the critical care areas, and in particular the remote high dependency units were an area of focus. And one particular high dependency unit that was very remote to the main critical care team and the location of where advanced support was going to be if a patient deteriorated, we found all these different latent threats, which I won't read through, but one of the particular ones was stuck in my mind was, everyone was checking that there was all the kit there, but they weren't checking that they were being switched on and that they worked. And in fact, we found out that the batteries were 3 years out of date, which was really, obviously at the time, quite alarming to the team. And we turned things around very rapidly, and that's one of the pluses, of course, of utilizing simulation in practice. You can make immediate changes. But again, were we really using the right design? At the time, we didn't know any better. What we did do was put it on the risk register and helped the teams develop their protocols and their checklists. But that all came from us educating people about how to rehearse. Concurrently, we were working on trying to look at human factor skills, so those non-technical skills. And we were able to publish something called the Circle of Care, which had compassionate human factor skills. And this was really us work as imagined. And the model really tried to help us train and coach and guide. So we're using simulation and then debriefing in these human factor non-technical skills, so people could work and be more resilient within the complex system that they were working within. So interesting. We're not quite sure if we had back then even the right stance, and we question ourselves always, but we do still use this particular model. But it started to dawn on us after that particular critical care simulation that we needed to start looking at the missed opportunities that we had, and starting to really think about the predominantly the two things that we found were we were not involving the right people when we were doing the simulations, whether they were lab based like the picture here of ECMO, or whether we were going out into the community and working with care home staff and how they interfaced across the health service with the GPs and the district nurses. So at the time, we didn't know, but we were doing transformative simulation because we were truly involving the technicians in the ECMO work, and we involved the staff in the care homes through empowering them and having that experiential learning opportunity across their organisations. And then really gave us sort of momentum was this policy that came out in England called the NHS Patient Safety Strategy, which sort of came in 2019 and had a bit of a relaunch post-COVID. And it's been fascinating. It was designed to say we wanted insight, involvement, and improvement. And of course, it is all about hopefully patient safety, but transforming. And it really gave us the authority to talk. Prior to this, and I have just had a conversation with someone about how people think these are soft skills, these are fluffy aspects of what we do. And again, that links to ethics and what we're doing. But it gave us the authority to be using, and we were already using Workers Imagined, Workers Done. So the work from Stephen Shorrock, we were already using human factor models, including others, not just the SEEPS model. But it brought simulation to light. You probably can't see this, a bit small, but it's the swarm huddle principles of swarming to an area using simulation to help improve or to recognize areas for change. And more recently, something called bow tie, which I don't have time to go into, but we've now got momentum at our trust, and it's because of this national policy, and we're using simulation to try and create this vision that we have an open and fair culture, all the things that are on and all the things that are making sense to us about looking forward, as well as looking back. So proactively utilising simulation techniques and proactively working with local teams. So our journey was slow, if I reflect now, but this is where we're at. And I'm really I can't quite believe it's happening. It's very exciting. But we now work, the simulation team is now a simulation service. I call us that. We haven't been officially rebranded. But we're working with the clinical teams or the non-clinical teams. We're doing some work with some admin managers at the moment. And we work with our Centre for Improvement, Transformation and Quality Improvement departments, our patient safety teams, etc., organizational development. And we now have a protocol, a sort of standard operating procedure where we identify a goal, we think about how we work as a partnership team across all these areas of expertise, and then we don't just do it as a one-off, because all the other simulations were one-offs. And I look back now and I think, gosh, we really should have repeated things, we really should have used the data more robustly. And so this forming of a policy has really sort of embedded what we're doing. So one of the things we were doing prior to 2019 was we'd become a high consequence infectious diseases unit, and we were mapping out the route. We use simulation to map out the route, but now we're using, and we have actually have a high consequence infectious diseases fellow in simulation now, which is absolutely brilliant. We have for about 3 or 4 years now, where they are influencing and developing policy, not just for our trust, but nationally. And of course, they're taking, each time we undertake a simulation, there's an intervention that's either triggered it, or and we're addressing the issue, or it's identifying more. And that's what we mean by this continuous loop. So we're working with a whole department of infection and prevention, but we're focusing particularly on the high consequence infectious diseases, and it tackles many departments, as I'm sure you can imagine. One of the things that I'm heavily invested in at the moment is some work that a colleague is leading on the WHO safety checklist that we are hopefully doing cross-site and also across organisations. But our electronic patient record came in with and the WHO checklist became a 53-point step. And to that end, unfortunately, we now have had several never events that we were not obviously expecting to have. That's why they're called never events, of course. But we utilize simulation to identify the underlying problems around our electronic WHO safety checklist. And now we've designed it so that it's at 23 points, and it's being used, not only it was piloted for simulation, it's now being used in real practice in 3 pilot areas. So we'll be changing policy with that, and it's it was intentional to choose identification and influence, whereas before we hadn't really chosen an intention, and we're seeing sort of clearer results. We begin with the end in mind, but obviously things are emergent as well, and it's a big project because we're a large organization. And one of the things we're starting to use is the swarm huddle method, which is where there may be an event. We're not quite sure why. And the principle of it is that we will either walk or talk through the event, or we may actually simulate it in real time as well, to try and help have a voice for those people that aren't necessarily able to speak up in these situations. So and to again, a lot of identification comes through, as we know, in transformative simulation, but we're really trying to think of those other intentions as well. And for us at Guy's and St Thomas's, it's still early days in using swarm huddles, and so simulation as a response to an event. And so we will simulate something where we have 9 improvement plans on falls, medicines errors, etc., where we may use simulation rather than another method of investigation. And it's about when error is unclear why it arose. So it's a reactive. It's not my favorite way of doing using simulation transformatively, but it's working. We're looking at our postpartum hemorrhage work, and we're looking at procedures, sorry, and we're looking at our major hemorrhage activation. And we're hopefully getting good results with that. We do have problem with enough people having facilitation skills to enable that to happen in a timely manner. And of course, we have to think about how triggering it is to recreate the event. So psychological safety is fundamental. So that's where we're currently at with a couple of things. So I wanted to just touch on some of the tools. I mentioned we modified the diamond, but more recently, in the last 3 or 4 years, we've started to use some questions out of the after action review template. Without really knowing if they were right, but it's definitely has helped us when we've looked at different routes for patient pathways through the hospital when there's been an emergency, for example, from one operating theatre that's in a new building round to the critical care unit. And this tool actually did help us with a structured debrief. What did we all set out to do in our different roles? And then what actually happened, and we analysed the difference. It felt very good as a learning conversation. Again, it fits with identification, but it doesn't necessarily truly fit other intentions. And of course, it wasn't designed for the way we're using it. Something for us to all discuss when we get to the questions. More recently, we've been using the ISOG tool that's come from NHS Education for Scotland, and a collaborative group. So with great thanks to Paul Bowie for this. He shared this tool, which is just amazing as a booklet that you can use to help us think about when we go into, with the swarm huddles in particular, proactively or reactively. As I said, mostly we're reactive at the moment, but we come in with this work as imagined, work as done, work as prescribed and disclosed lens, and we ask some specific questions of staff. What makes or made anything difficult? What surprises you with that? How do you adapt? Where can things go wrong, or where did it go wrong? What are the performance influencing factors that are affecting our safeguards, or what's degrading them so that they're no longer a safety mechanism? And it's really helpful, the aha moments that we're seeing, and the inclusivity of these questions, and allowing people to share that things are going wrong, or things can go wrong, and how can we improve them together, is so powerful. And that's why I think we're gathering momentum with support for simulation. One of the things we're doing here, it's a slow journey, started The simulation actually ran in July, but it started 12 months ago. So it's a relationship journey with a team. We're working with the interventional radiology team, and we planned for a simulation. It ran in July, and from that we have developed some sim-based simulations. They've changed some policies around different things, and roles and responsibilities are being reviewed. And our plan at the moment is to repeat the in situ, but to repeat the whole cycle. And within that, we're being the objective curious lens, we being the simulation service, the human factors team, and they're being the subject matter experts. But what we're doing is we're training them to run their own simulation, and we're now starting to teach them more around human factors. Oh, apologies, I went backwards there. So that's the exciting thing, so that there's going to be more people to give them the tools so that they can run their own swarm huddles, run their own in situ simulation intentions for reviewing what changes they make, without it being always having come back to the center, which slows things down. So this was them, sorry, we cut and paste, this picture's really great actually. This was us in the sim center, being curious, using we did two questioning techniques, the after action review, but also the not advocacy with inquiry, appreciative inquiry method, sorry. And we were really thinking about, where does everyone stand when the sign in of a patient coming to interventional radiology is? Where does it actually happen now, and where would we like it to happen? And we've moved from actually an in situ, a laboratory sim in the sim center, to actually a desktop, because all these people can move around on the screen, and we're trying to think about the best positioning for the room and think about spatial awareness. So it's really interesting how things are evolving, and it doesn't have to be full-blown simulation to get dialogue and to get consensus and hopefully change. So just moving on to ethics. This is really thanks to Sharon and the Transformative SIG for really sort of getting us to start thinking about, how do we do this ethically, and where aren't we? And this is still a piece of informed work to be done, and this is emerging and we're learning about this. But one of the things that we know is that thinking about from what we're doing actively with simulation to really being accountable for what we're doing. And that made me think very deeply when Sharon asked me about that. Where do we make the decisions? Who makes the decisions? How do we make the decisions? And that's not just on the simulation, that's when we then deliver it, and then what we identify afterwards. And so we have to think about these things. And it's great acknowledgement to Sharon for her incredible infographics, and the SIG, of course, for this. But the five pillars of design, think about purpose and power, who holds the power, what are the options, are really important. And we're finding that co-design right from the outset is so powerful, to think about, rather than trying to prepare something and then give it to someone to then critique and improve. We save time, we save energy, and we get it right almost first time when we have the right people in the room to help it with that planning. And of course, then we have to think, what are we trying to do? Everyone, like we were running simulation, and then we were testing, identifying, challenging, trying to understand. We were doing far too many things. So this framework is starting to help us really focus. And then, of course, we've got the 4Ds, which I won't go into. And I think what sums it up is this: actually, without all of this structure, we were blindly using simulation, enjoying what we were doing, helping our organization, but actually we were not necessarily identifying the right solutions. They weren't sustained changes. and some of the changes perhaps ethically weren't the right ones that we were suggesting, or not the right ones, but they weren't necessarily in the right priority of what we did. And so we've been on this really long and still long journey, which I know I'll look back in another 5 years and think, oh wow, that that took us a long time, but it will have evolved so much more. We know that we need to have shared responsibility. In particular, that's the biggest thing that's just recently happened to me, having done something. The responsibility for dissemination has to be shared. It can't just come from the simulation center, can't just come from one department who have expertise in organizational development. It has to be across the area that we were using simulation to explore. And they have to also be the decision makers as well. And that's what we're trying to emphasize now. I think sometimes people think simulation is the solution and you're going to do it for them as well. And so that's something that we're really, again, beginning with the end in mind, and being really explicit about that. And in Sharon's word, it's about having traceability. So nothing is assumed, everything is explicitly designed. We surface and we identify and we analyze, whether that's analyzing video retrospectively, whether it's analyzing data we've collected, and then we document that in our formal structures. So we document outcomes on radar, our incident reporting mechanisms, and we document on risk registers, but also we're sharing reports and that and disseminating the information, which is obviously fundamental. So we obviously embed everything within as many standards as we can, focusing on the ASPE standards around safety. And really, as I've mentioned already, our intentions are to be purposeful, to be efficient, to be productive and decisive. And one of the phrases we have is to be like ninjas, that if we are going into a clinical or non-clinical area, but the work setting, then you won't know that we've been there afterwards, other than there's a report and there's action and change. So we are clean, tidy, efficient, professional, and it's safe for everybody. And we think about the physical safety for our staff, our faculty, and of course patients within that. And part of human factors and ergonomics is about well-being and the joy of work, and that's what we fundamentally believe as well. And our team are enjoying having these tangible actions and outputs now, rather than just running a sim that the team enjoyed, and then we go on to the next thing. We're in a more continuous relationship, which I think is important. So must thank Beth Tennant for this lovely slide. Actually, we've been working on a project together with Sharon, is thinking about transformative simulation surfaces the risk because we intend it to. We mustn't create new harm, and safety and ethics have to come in from the start. And I think that's probably the message I would encourage everyone to think about. Not just physical safety and psychological safety, organizational reputation and ethics of what we're doing. It really has to be considered. We have this checklist, which is very bright in color when you see it like this on a screen, where we think about all the safety from kit, financially, and we think about the physical space, and we think about the clinical space, which I'm sure you all know, and we're very happy to share this checklist. It's a two-sided checklist. We've been using it for nearly 10 years now, I think. Just to take a breath and look at my slide, I'm thinking this is one of my summing up slides. It's really important that we make sure we add value, make sure that we are systems based, that we think about the people within the system, and that is what we've been doing. And I think I've mentioned data management. One of the things we're really trying to tighten up on is how we we store our video recording safely, but it's that sharing of video footage. A lot of departments want to see the footage, and obviously we have to have consent for that, and we manage that quite tightly. If people want to come and see the footage that we've used, then we don't send that out. We ask managers to come to see that, because we don't want the data to be incorrectly used, just like any kind of research data. Something ethically that we often find, and we consider, especially in any of our areas, is really thinking about if we're asked to stress test a system and look at the pressure points, how ethically appropriate is that? And we have to think about the safety of everybody. So this was one example of testing pediatric emergency services in our ED, and we've got an obstetric one coming up very soon, and we're just exploring, is that the right thing to do when a department is busy? Is it the right way to use simulation? And this image, it was very effective. And we identified some real potential life-threatening latent threats from doing this simulation that we were able to mitigate for, so that didn't happen in real life. But we didn't know that at the time, and I suppose the message here is try and think through those potential things now, so the data doesn't get lost, your findings get acted upon, and you follow it up. That's something that I try to build into everything. There's follow-up time as well. You've already heard from Julie, I know, a couple of webinars ago, but she very kindly shared with us her Simulation Safety Club principles around using simulation in a way to shine a light on things. And I've been able to adapt that here, and I'm implementing that right now. We have a Safety One Safety Club, so anyone in the round looking at areas where we've got a concern. And I'm going to show you an example in just a minute. And I very bravely, foolishly probably is the other word, did it for up to 100 people at a time, because it was a trust-wide issue. And we have over 24,000 staff in the organisation, so we needed to have a large group. But we're also using Simulation Safety Club in a Safety 2 proactive way now, to go and amplify good things, good practices, and we're doing that in our ED department, to help them surface what's happening in the real work setting, and that's on a much smaller scale, which is much more manageable, I have to say. And the idea is, as I've said, this continuous loop of learning with a team, and the intention is that we will walk away from that team. They will stand on their own and perhaps invite us to show us their successes in the future, rather than us holding all the skills and the knowledge on how to do this and how to analyze this. So this was a picture of the Sim Safety Club. 100 people were booked, 95 people attended, and in the middle you can possibly see there was an operating theatre, very low fidelity simulation, to help us try and get co-production, to be creative, and to try and get people being aspirational. And it's one of the successes that I really wanted to share with you. I used appreciative inquiry, and we focused on improvement. We have the WHO procedural checklist, and we've got our pilot, but we wanted to see if it could be done any better. So the questions were asked after the simulation. Well, how good could each phase be? What's working well for you in your setting? Because we have these procedural checklists happening in multiple places, and so on, as you can see. And when we asked the question, if you could dream of what excellent looks like, or what do you want to try, and how do we get there, some incredibly creative ideas came about, and we ended up with 95 ideas, or 95 people, sorry, who came up with 51 ideas, sorry. And then we did this ethical bit of actually let's prioritize 12. And out of the 95 people, 24 volunteered to help us carry that out. And we're right in the middle of designing that carrying out of these 12 ideas. And we used this lovely tool to help try and identify the ideas and then to break them down into our area of greatest opportunity, and people voted on it, and they call it a liberating structure. It was fascinating as an exercise that I learned from my improvement team partners, and these are now our 10 priorities that we are working on. So the roles and responsibilities need to be defined in each of the different areas. We have multiple areas that use the procedural checklist. We need to look at our electronic record and have a paper checklist. And we're looking at defining these important moments in time where there are pressures, and looking at the safeguards and the barriers. So it was a very powerful day. Everyone is invested in these 10 priorities, and we're looking at a number of ways to support the trust in doing these. So where are we now at Guys and Tommies? Well, transformational simulation's been accepted as an option. I smile because it certainly I didn't think that was going to happen 3 years ago. We know that with this power, it creates a risk, and there's lots of risks that I've talked about all the way through, but because we're aware of them, I feel it's safer. Having to do something trust-wide really does require admin support, and that is very, very minimal at the moment. So that does delay what we can achieve. But we do have within our faculty development program, number 5 it would be, we have a human factors and transformative simulation for change training day that is for governance staff, clinical patient safety leads, as well as simulationists, and we're really starting to work on that. It's just a pilot. It's only occurred for the first time last week with Beth Tennant and Sharon and Paul Bowie, actually. So it's a really lovely collaborative effort. And we're hopefully running one next week. And we've introduced a new tool that wasn't part of PSERF, but Paul has enabled us to recognise that actually to really try and get to be proactive with some of these systems, the bow tie method is the way forward. And some of you probably know it far better than me, so I'm not going to explain it right now. But what's really good is we're starting to risk assess the barriers and the safeguards that we have, and working out, are they effective or not? And that doing that in a robust way is going to hopefully ensure that we can work more safely. So for me, my main takeaway is that we can create great insight for our healthcare organisations and teams. A simulation isn't just for training or to practice a skill. It's really important that we do this well, and so I'm enjoying this framework and enjoying working within the SIG, etc., as well as working outside of the SIG. I'm going to try and stop sharing, Sharon, which is a little bit of a problem at this end. There we go, and I can see you all. So sorry that
Fantastic.
I didn't think I could talk for that long, but I did.
No, you
Sorry.
did amazing. That's
I'm so
fantastic.
sorry. Shouldn't laugh. I'm sorry.
Right. Well, that was really fantastic. And like I say, every time I hear you, I hear something new. So it's just really inspiring. The thing that I've got to figure this out, and I never get this right, so bear with me, everyone, on these webinars. I'm going to try and allow you all to speak, but please put any questions in the either the Q&A section or the chat, and I'll just try and
I can
enable everyone
as
to
well
see
now.
us and speak. Here we go. Allow
Thank
camera,
you,
allow
Kate.
mic.
Thank you, Julie. It's all down to some of your work, Julie, for sure.
This is what's so great about these webinars. We all learn so much and share, don't we? And then can take them away and do it together. Right. I think I'm enabling some people and maybe not everyone. Let me know if your cameras are on. You seen any cameras coming on, Colette?
No, not yet.
Hmm.
Oh, no.
Um,
Oh yeah, someone's just did. Oh, it's Rose. Hello, Rose.
Brilliant.
Fiona. Nice. Got a couple of people. I don't know if anyone has any questions or wants to comment really. I felt I hadn't realized how much work we've been doing. So I just wanted to try and show the journey. I hope that was useful.
I think the bit for me, was there anything? I think I've nearly got everyone done.
Breathless trying to keep up. Oh, sorry, Andy. Don't get breathless. Psychological safety for participants. How do you look to ensure psychological safety when recreating an event through simulation? Lynn, amazing question. I'm sure everyone can answer that who's on the call. But for me, fundamentally, I've learned that nearly everything is an announced simulation. People know it's happening. We don't do unannounced unless it's absolutely vital. So it's working with people, learning to work with the ward sister and their team, ward sister charge nurse and their team. If it is about using, like we're testing the major hemorrhage protocol at the moment, or we're looking at the major hemorrhage protocol, let's say, and that's about walking it through with them first, because they may not have had much experience. That's what we're finding. A lot of people haven't had much experience of simulation, which we know was like that 10 years ago. But to still see that now, it's really interesting as we make up such a diverse workforce. And we explain, and for transformative simulation, we stop and start a lot of the time if people want to stop. And in fact, some of the debriefing works far better to stop and start and engage in that big room of 100 people. I wasn't the only facilitator. We had a ratio of 1 to 10. So we had facilitators on each table. I led the debriefing, but I pre-warned everybody. They had pre-information before coming. I talked to them, and that's what's the beauty of the Sim Safety Club. For me, the way we've been running it is none of them were participants. They're there as observers, so that we could explore the aspect without them feeling they're putting themselves in a vulnerable position where and we did have the chief of surgery and the not the chief exec, but our chief medical officer, some very senior people, all the way to our portering staff and our nursing and ODP staff. So it's doing the same as we do for smaller simulations, I would say, and making sure people feel they can speak up, and as a facilitator, controlling the situation. Sorry, Sharon, go ahead. You
Yeah,
look like you're
there's a few
rattling.
more. Yeah, no, there's a couple more questions. So Cindy said, how any advice on how to get the senior leadership team on board to listen to the sim latent error findings?
Have a just quick sip of coffee while I smirk. That's an interesting one, Cindy. Um, yeah, I guess we found that we write a report. So we do a newsletter for the floor, so the departments get a lovely little newsletter, and then we use a different form of writing to talk to our seniors, and they get a report, and it's risk. We give it. We use the risk language that they have, and try and use a different format of wording, and I think that helps. If it involves money, then of course it's about putting the risk to people, and then if it can't be addressed, which let's face it, we can't always address everything, it's being put on a risk register, and that's generally it. But it did take a while, and I suppose there's still some skepticism. There are many ways to do things. It's been and I learnt this again from Julie, really, and her team up in Lothian, sorry, Forth Valley, sorry, Julie, that it's showing what it can do, showing people that it can be an inclusive way to explore things. And I think, I don't know if you remember, Cindy, and I don't think you're definitely not as old as me, but I know you've got a lot of experience. But back in the day, we used to have to show people what sim could do for education for them to buy in. So it's again that showing that it can do things.
Yeah, and if I come in there as well from
Yes,
like the
please do.
framework perspective, I think that's something as we start using the framework more intentionally will help us, because the big part in there is the data capture bit, and that's where if we align our intention with data capture, because a lot of, like, for example, the human factors methods that Colette talked about, like they already give you a process of what you need to look for to capture the data for that particular approach. And so that's why it's quite important, because often what we do is we design simulation for change, but we kind of don't think about it so intentionally, and we will get outputs and everything else, but because we haven't designed it so intentionally, we don't focus on certain things. So things emerge and we're trying to capture it all, and but we don't really have a kind of, you know, really intentional process that's a bit more impactful. And that's why we're kind of trying to move everyone down this more intentional approach. And it takes us time, and it's one of those things we need to work with. But we're finding, like the bow tie one we're doing, Colette was talking about, because we're using that as our lens, both to design the simulation but to
Mm.
capture the data. It means your output and your report is a lot more intentional and focused.
Mm. There's a couple of questions I just saw come in.
Yeah.
Kate mentioned managing ending the sim because of changing clinical environment. So that was the thing, I think Sharon had an aha moment when I explained we have a safety director, a sim director, and a safety director. So we're not the department lead, but one of us has got site and direct comms with the lead of a department or a section if we're doing something sequential through the organization. And we will just stop the simulation and attempt to debrief what we've done so far if it becomes unsafe. And certainly that is fundamental as a role, and we have had to stop the sim sometimes. There's always learning, and then you can take things forward from there. I love Andy's question about was there if there's been a dispute. Well, we're being recorded. But yes, of course, there's disputes, Andy. And one of the things we're having at the moment is um, and it links beautifully to work as imagined versus work as done or work as disclosed, because 95 people that attended that, 5 of which were very senior in surgery, all felt that roles and responsibilities are clear because it's in the protocol. But obviously, at least 60 people said roles and responsibilities are not clear in our department. And so we just go back to them with that hard evidence. And then from that large simulation that session, we're now doing micro. So in interventional radiology, we're now doing that in a micro way and helping them identify with that kind of illuminative approach of being curious and asking them, what happens if? Have you thought of if that happens, what do you do? Then we're realizing that their roles and responsibilities, or they are realizing their roles and responsibilities are not clear. So it's really slow, but that's how we're having to do it. It's sort of doing it at a macro level and then a micro level. And ultimately, if it's, the buck doesn't stop with me, I am only the guide on the side for departments. So if they don't want to take something forward, that's up to them. What would you advise for someone just starting out using sim for improvement and change? I'm going to be like you, Julie, and say just do it, get on with it, find some friends, and make a plan. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is to be inclusive when you're making that plan. I'd often go away, get the idea, draft a plan, and take it to them. But actually, starting from the start with people where you don't waste any time then.
Andy's got his hand up.
Thought I'd try and talk. So I don't know if
Yay!
I'm coming through on the Wi-Fi, because give maybe incentivize some other people to speak rather than type. But I think that just do it is brilliant coming from somebody who's deeply embedded in simulation, has a spectacular history and a great team and all the rest of it. But I would sort of modify that a little bit and say, set about doing it. Because I think if you've started to get the structure in place, the people with the knowledge in place and working together and so on, then you're ready and your ducks are lined up and your powder is dry when an approachable problem appears that you might be part of the solution to. So it still asks you to just do it, but I would say, start with getting everything lined up to be able to do it. Is that trivial? Anyway, that's what.
No,
Right.
you're absolutely right. I don't just do it. I think about it, and actually, it's all part of that risk assessment and that very brightly coloured tool. I said we really think about planning first, as Elizabeth has just put in the chat. You know, when it's unsafe, it's all part of our trying to think ahead, because ultimately, real work has to come first, real patients, real staff, and that's the other thing. I don't know if I said it, becomes unsafe if your simulation is taking too long. And I've definitely pulled a stop call time on something just the other week where the consultant wanted perfection, but the call to the real receiving consultant was taking far too long, and the department, you could see it getting busier and busier around us, and I just said, I know what we'll do is we'll leave him finishing that call and we'll take everyone for a debrief, otherwise we won't have a debrief. And that's what we did. So the sim stopped except for the young doctor on the call to the consultant.
Elizabeth, did you want to come in? I can see you've got your hand up.
Good question.
No, I can read your question. If not, if you can't, maybe you can't turn your oh, I think you can't. Do you know what? I don't think you're enabled. Hang on, here we go. I've enabled you. There we go. Can you talk now?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Hello.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So I'm in Australia.
Hello.
And the organisation I'm with are just beginning the process of establishing simulation as a profession. That is, to actually have a listed occupation for simulation professional. So what I'm really interested in, and what my question was about, is how do you know what standards have you got, what measures have you got, or are you building to say that somebody, and I use the quote that I heard on the way in, when something is going wrong, how do you know that somebody's got that capability? Do you have standards or measures that describe that? Because if you do, I'd love to have some, share them.
I've just put something in the chat actually, Elizabeth, because we've just developed a professional development framework which might help you with that, which kind of sets out all the different kind of levels of we didn't build it on competency based, but kind of the requirements in different areas of your growth, discovery, growth, maturity, and we looked across the different ways that people use simulation. So we've got 5 domains, and have a look at it. It's in the chat. But within there, we've got education, we've got transformative, we've got technology, leadership, and scholarship. And then within, and it's not linear, so it's not that you have to just sit in one. It's to recognize that actually all of us in simulation, we tend to have it's such a complex, diverse profession, and all of us tend to be on different levels of that domain. So you might be.
And you're working mainly in health, aren't you?
Yes, yeah. Health and safety.
So I thank you for the link. That'll be great. I'm looking at, or we're looking at, how do we do that across all the domains that use simulation, from defence, health, mining, transport, aviation.
I would argue, have a look at it. It is focused on health, and that's how we've developed it. And we've looked at the
Of
health
course.
simulation literature and with the healthcare professionals, etc., and simulation professionals. But what I would say is that we've kept it very high level on purpose and I think because of
Good.
that, a lot of it's probably very transferable. And I know I was over in Australia last year actually at the conference that has got aviation and military and everything. And some of the stuff I was doing a talk on transformative simulation, and a lot of the other sectors were saying this would apply to our sectors. It's transferable because
So
it is very
this
high
is the
level.
conference in Adelaide?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah, okay. I missed meeting you.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's right. Yeah.
yeah. Sorry if I misinterpreted your question in the chat then, Elizabeth. I think Julie wants to come in. Do come in, Julie. But I think there are obviously standards for
Thank you.
simulated practice, which I think are really, really helpful. And it,
Health and aviation are certainly further ahead, but defence, transport, mining,
have
they're
you
all
thought about
doing
the
it.
military? What about the military? I can put you in touch with someone who's just written a chapter on military simulation, if you like. If you drop your email
Yes,
in the chat.
please.
Yeah. Julie, come in, my lovely.
Hi, thank you so much, Colette. Can you hear me? I'm driving.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
if you can hear me. It was just really to respond to Elizabeth's point. I'm not an expert at all in most of these fields, Elizabeth, but I have been linking in with some colleagues locally in Scotland in the education sector and also the veterinary sector. And what I have found is that the standards are very useful more for myself to think about, well, you know, what are they're mainly looking at support around faculty development and developing a purpose for simulation and clarity around that in their fields. And yeah, I found it really helpful. I think probably there would be more work to be done within specific sectors, but I think it's a very, very good framework to start.
Thank you. Well, I'm certainly glad to have the link.
Oh, brilliant. Cindy, I'll take the swarm huddle offline. Maybe we can catch up next week. Just conscious of time. And I'm sitting under 3 layers of glass, and I feel like I'm in Australia. It's really hot here, which is random for Southeast London.
Yes.
Yes.
I will keep it that way. I'll be in London at the end of June.
Oh, Elizabeth,
cool.
if you want to catch up, we can happily catch up and talk you through stuff. Just let us know if you've got some spare time.
I'd love to.
Yes, my colleague is in London as well, the military colleague. So
Okay. So what's the best way to get in touch?
I'll email you. I was going to say I can email because you've just dropped your email. Yeah, I'll do it.
That'd be great.
Excellent.
Okay.
Look forward to that. Right, brilliant. Well, I guess we'll take it to a close. Thank you so much, Colette. That was absolutely fabulous, fantastic, and great questions as well. So thank you everyone for coming and engaging. I think we all learn something new every time we do these, so they're really valuable. And the next one we have, which is on the 14th of July, is going to be Phil Gurnett, and he's from King's College Hospital NHS Foundation Trust, and he's going to be talking about exploring how transformative simulation is already happening within everyday work, often unseen but highly impactful. Drawing on recent experience within his team, he shows how these practices can be recognised, strengthened, and used more intentionally. So really looking forward to that one with Phil. And then just to remind you that if you go on the ASPE website, we do have lots of resources on the Transformative Simulation resource page. We've actually got a new website that's going to be launched in just a couple of weeks, and there's going to be more resources there. So we'll update you when that happens, but that's a really exciting initiative for us. And just to remind you as well, we've just launched today registration for our conference, which is going to be in Harrogate this year, the beautiful Harrogate. So we're very excited about that. So hopefully you've submitted an abstract. If you haven't, please do think about coming anyway, because it's going to be a really, really great programme. Lovely to see you all. Hopefully see you all again soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.